A trait of certain ambassadors. In order always to be learning something by communication with others, which is one of the finest schools there can be, I observe in my travels this practice. I always steer those I talk with back to the subjects they know best. To winds the sailor should confine his words, the farmer to his oxen, let the man of war tell of his wounds, the shepherd of his herds. For most often the opposite happens. Each man chooses to hold forth on another man's occupation rather than his own, thinking that this is so much new reputation acquired. Witness the reproach Arca- Archidamus made to Periander, that he was abandoning the glory of a good doctor for that of a bad poet. See how broadly Caesar spreads himself to make us understand his inventions for building bridges and machines, and how he restricts himself where he speaks of the functions of his profession, of his valor and his military conduct. His exploits sufficiently prove him an excellent captain. He wants to make himself known as an excellent engineer, a somewhat different matter. The other day, a man of the legal profession, when shown a study furnished with all sorts of books of his trade and of every other sort, found in it no occasion for remark, but he stopped to comment rudely and magisterially upon a barricade placed at the head of the winding stair to the study, which 100 captains and soldiers encountered every day without remark and without offence. Dionysius the elder was a very great leader in war, as befitted his rank, but he labored to recommend himself principally by poetry, about which he knew nothing. The slow ox wants the saddle, the horse wants to plow. On that trek, you never do anything worthwhile. Thus, we must always throw the architect, the painter, the shoemaker, and the rest each back to his quarry. And apropos of this, in the reading of history, which is everybody's business, I make it a habit to consider who are the authors. If they are people who have no other profession than letters, I learn mainly their style and language. If they are doctors, I believe them most readily in what they tell us about the temperature of the air, the health and constitution of princes, and wounds and maladies. If they are lawyers, we must take what they say on controversies over rights, the laws, the establishment of governments, and things like that. If theologians, church affairs, ecclesiastical censures, dispensations, and marriages, if courtiers, manners and ceremonies, if men of war, what belongs to their business, and principally the accounts of the great actions at which they were present in person, if ambassadors, negotiations, understandings, and diplomatic practices, and the way to conduct them. For this reason, what I should have passed over in another without stopping, I noticed and considered in the history of the Seigneur de Langy, a very wise man in such matters. He first relates the edifying he first relates the edifying remonstrances delivered by Emperor Charles V in the Roman consistory in the presence of the Bishop of Macon and the Signor Duvalier, our ambassadors, in which were interspersed many outrageous remarks against us, among others, that if his captains, soldiers, and subjects were not very different from those of the King of France in fidelity and military ability, he would instantly tie a rope around his neck and go beg the king for mercy. It seems that he meant something of this, for 2 or 3 times thereafter it befell him to repeat these same words, and also that he challenged the king to fight him in his shirt with sword and dagger in a boat. After relating which, the aforesaid Signor de Langy, continuing his history, adds that when these ambassadors sent the king a dispatch about these matters, they disguised the greater part and especially concealed from him the 2 preceding items. Now, I found it very strange that it should be in the power of an ambassador to make his choice of the information that he should give his master, especially material of such consequence coming from such a personage, and spoken in so great an assembly. It seems to me that the function of a servant is to represent things faithfully in their entirety just as they happened, leaving to his master the liberty to arrange, judge, and choose. For to alter the truth or hide it from another for fear he might take it otherwise than he should, and that it might push him into some bad course, and meanwhile to leave him ignorant of his affairs, such conduct seems to me proper for him who gives the law, not for him who receives it, for the man in charge and the schoolmaster, not for the man who ought to think himself inferior in prudence and good counsel as well as in authority. However this may be, I should not like to be served in this way in my little doings. We are so eager to get out from under command under some pretext, and to usurp mastery, each man aspires so naturally to liberty and authority, that to a superior no useful quality in those who serve him should be so dear as their natural and simple obedience. We corrupt the function of command when we obey through discretion, not subjection. P. Crassus, whom the Romans considered 5 times happy when he was consul in Asia, commanded a Greek engineer to fetch him the bigger of 2 ships' masts that he had seen in Athens for some battering machine he wanted to make. The engineer, on the strength of his knowledge, permitted himself to choose otherwise, and fetched the smaller one, the more suitable according to the rules of his craft. Crassus, after listening patiently to his reasons, had him well whipped, respecting the interests of discipline more than the interest of the job. On the other hand, however, one might also consider that such constrained obedience belongs only to precise and stated commands. Ambassadors have a freer commission, which in many areas depends in the last resort on their judgment. They do not simply carry out, but also by their counsel form and direct their master's will. I have in my time known people in command to be reprimanded for having obeyed the words of the king's letters rather than the demands of the situation they were in. Men of understanding still condemn the practice of the kings of Persia, who gave such minutely detailed instructions to their agents and lieutenants that in the slightest matters they had to have recourse to these instructions, so that the resulting delay in so vast an area of dominion often did notable harm to their affairs. And did not Crassus, when he wrote to an expert and advised him of the use for which that mast was destined, seem to consult his judgment and invite him to interpose his opinion?